Hey there, quirky folks! I am your host, Anna, and today we're going to look at some of the upcoming spin-offs that are set in the Game of Thrones universe. HBO has already begun with House of the Dragon, as it is the first spin-off show to come out of GOT. We're following the history of House Targaryen almost a couple hundred years before Daenerys came into the mix. But before this one, HBO has already canceled two other spin-offs. One of them was called Blood Moon, and it featured Naomi Watts alongside Jamie Campbell Bower. It was set during the Age of Heroes era 8,000 years before Game of Thrones, and a pilot was actually shot for it, but HBO decided that this series wasn't worth investing upon. The chief content officer of HBO, Casey Bloys, said that even though the pilot wasn't a disaster, it required a lot more invention. So at last, the series was canceled. Another set spin-off, which was under development, was an entitled Flea Bottom series. It would have featured the impoverished communities where Sir Davos Seaworth was raised, but the idea of certain Flea Bottom adventures was also dropped. Well, I am glad that it was, but I'm also glad that HBO is developing some other amazing spin-offs. Before we look into those, it would be nice of you to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Now the first and the most anticipated upcoming Game of Thrones spin-off is a Jon Snow series. Towards the end of Game of Thrones, Jon Snow was exiled after killing Daenerys Targaryen, and we saw him moving on beyond the wall along with the rest of the wildlings. Since Jon was the big lead of the original series and had a huge fan following, it would make sense for him to lead his own spin-off show beyond Game of Thrones. Even Christopher Hivju would return as the Redhead. The reason we're talking about it is because George R.R. Martin himself confirmed that a Jon Snow series is indeed being developed. And very recently, when Josh Horowitz asked Kit Harington about it, he denied a comment.
The only thing I'll say about that is I know nothing about it.
Oh, come on.
But looking at his reaction to the question, it does seem that he knows about what's cooking. Now, before we look at the other shows that are under development, I'm going to suggest three of my own ideas that I believe should get their own spin-off shows. The first of them is a show based on Aegon the Conqueror. I believe that House of the Dragon should have included Aegon's conquest. This was a time that also included a lot of battles. Watching his struggle in his days of glory would have been quite amazing. Along with him, we would have gotten characters like Queen Visenya and Aegon's younger sister Rhaenys. Aegon would give us some crazy dragon sequences involving the Black Dread Balerion, and his sisters would also join in with their dragons Vhagar and Meraxes. So there's plenty of stories to tell with Aegon the First. And just imagine if someone like Henry Cavill would end up playing that role. The next idea I'm gonna tease is an Arya spinoff. Towards the end of Game of Thrones, Sansa became the ruler of Winterfell, but Arya told her siblings that she wasn't going back to the north. All the maps ended at the edge of Westeros, so she wanted to explore what's beyond that, and we could catch on to a slightly older and skilled Arya and her adventures in different unexplored corners of the world. She could face off totally new threats, or maybe some old ones. Even Sansa could be brought back into the mix, as the series would feature how she has been ruling in Winterfell. And a build-up for a Sansa-Arya reunion would just be perfect. Old Valeria. The legendary nation of Valeria is long gone by the time Game of Thrones begins, but we hear a lot of talk about it in House of the Dragon. Legend says that the days of old Valeria were glorious, and no city or kingdom will ever come close to its grandeur. A season focusing on Valeria could solve many lingering questions about the Empire, and we could also get to see its eventual doom. Our needs of imaginative fantasies will be fulfilled with this series, as it could feature an endless parade of dragons along with some magic to spare. HBO could go on to make one of its most expensive and ambitious projects. Okay, now I'm done with my own ideas. Let's move on to the other spin-offs that are set to be under development besides the Jon Snow series. 10,000 Ships. While House of the Dragon tells us the story of a couple hundred years before Game of Thrones, this 10,000 Ships spin-off is supposed to be set 1,000 years before the original series. It will feature a narrative about the adventures in the Westerosi waters involving 10,000 ships. And the main focus will be upon the founder of Dorne, Princess Nymeria. Yes, Arya named her direwolf Nymeria after this Westerosi legend.
Nymeria? I'm finally going home.
Next up, we've got a spin-off based on the Sea Snake.
My house is Valerian, the greatest power in the realm.
This series was originally called The Nine Voyages, but then it got renamed. Steve Toussaint is the one playing Corlys Velaryon, aka the Sea Snake in the House of the Dragon, and he has been one of the standout characters in the series. He gained his name and his reputation because of his voyages through the seas. And guess what? His ship is also called the Sea Snake. So, the Sea Snake series will be a prequel to House of the Dragon, and we'll get to see how this rich man earned his name. Also, if you're interested in his family tree and history, then you could check out our House Velaryon family tree video and get ready for the Sea Snake prequel. But before that, the next Game of Thrones spinoff is A Tale of Duncan Egg. This one is set just 90 years before the events of Game of Thrones. It is the story about Sir Duncan the Tall, who was also known as Dunk. And then there's Maekar Targaryen's fourth son, Aegon V, in his young days. He married Betha Blackwood and had 5 children. One of those led us to Daenerys Targaryen. He is the great-grandfather of Daenerys Targaryen. He was also called Egg, or Aegon the Fortunate. And together, Duncan and Aegon came to be called Duncan Egg. Now for the final 2 spin-offs, we've got The Golden Empire and an untitled animated series. Apart from the live-action shows, HBO is also dipping their feet into animation. They are coming up with 2 animated series. One of them will be focused on the Golden Empire of the Yi dynasty of Essos. And we're yet to get some more info about the second untitled animated show. Okay, these are all the Game of Thrones spin-off shows which are under development and the ones that should happen. Which ones are you excited about? Let us know if you've got some ideas for spin-offs set in Westeros. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one.